Hi, and welcome to Mama Doobie, where I share videos about motherhood, DIYs, and organization. In today's video, we're going to be talking all about baby led weaning. I have an 8.5-month-old named Lucas, who started baby led weaning when he was about 6 months old. Today, we'll be getting into what Lucas eats in one day, as well as tips that we learned along the way. But before we get started, be sure to like this video and subscribe, and turn on that notification bell so you don't miss future videos. Also, be sure to stick around to the end of the video where I'll be sharing a recipe for baked cinnamon oatmeal. Now let's get into it. So here's Lucas slugging around the kitchen floor. As I mentioned before, Lucas is now 8.5 months old. He still has no teeth and he's been eating solid food for about 2.5 months. He's progressed beyond the beginning stages of baby-led weaning. Now before we get to Lucas's first meal, you should know that I am not an expert in baby-led weaning. Always consult with your child's pediatrician before introducing solids or beginning things like baby-led weaning. I'm only here to share with you our experience and the things that I have learned along the way. So Lucas woke up around 8 this morning and he always wants to nurse first thing. He is a breast milk baby, but we do include pump bottles pretty regularly as well. Lucas usually gets about 4 to 5 servings of breast milk per day in addition to the food that you're going to see in this video. Here we are hanging out and practicing Lucas's favorite word before I head to the kitchen to get started on breakfast. So for Lucas's first meal, he's having eggs, avocado, and baked cinnamon raisin oatmeal. And don't forget to stick around until the end of the video where I'll be sharing my recipe for that with you guys. So we always start by wiping Lucas's hands with a sanitizing wipe. He's a crawler now, so his hands are always on the floor. You'll also notice that I don't give Lucas all of his food at one time. You should always do what works best for you and your baby, but Lucas tends to get a little anxious and overwhelmed if I give him all of his food at one time. Here he goes, tipping over his new cup. I don't think this was really the right time to introduce a new cup to him, so I went ahead and switched those cups out for him. But for the most part, I try to stay out of Lucas's way. One of the rules with baby-led weaning is to let your little one figure it all out on their own. Which brings me to my first tip, which is to sit on your hands. This has never been easy for me. As a mom, I naturally want to help, and I have a type A personality. I want to keep all of the mess contained. I don't want Lucas to drop his food on the floor or to smear his food into his hair. But the point of baby-led weaning is for them to figure out how to feed themselves. And that actually brings me into my next tip, which is to embrace the mess. For those mamas who work to maintain a clean home, I know this is hard. It can be cringeworthy to see your baby exploring a new food by smearing it all over the place. I keep a silicone bib on Lucas while he eats, which catches most of the food that falls, and we always keep a wet washcloth and paper towels nearby. Always do your best not to react to food falling on the ground or other food shenanigans your little one might get up to. Don't fret though, you'll find your rhythm with cleaning up and it will always get better with time. But the very best thing that you could do to help keep more food off the floor, my advice is to get a dog. We do our best to keep Copper out of the kitchen while Lucas is eating, so there is less of a distraction for him. Here's Copper. He's about to be poking his head in through the doggy door, looking for food to fall on the floor. Moving on to his second meal of the day, Lucas napped from 11:30 to 2 o'clock, and I nursed him before he went down for his nap and when he woke up. That makes up 3 nursing sessions for Lucas today. It's 2:30 now, and I know I forgot to show you the plate, but Lucas is having some green beans, sweet peas, deli turkey, and some pears. You can see here that I am adding some pear juice to Lucas's cup. Things have been moving a little bit slowly for him, so I was trying to help him get things going, if you know what I mean. Soon after we started adding solid foods to Lucas's diet, we noticed that he started having some trouble with constipation. This is very common for babies, and we found a couple of things that help solve this problem. Which brings me to my third tip for you guys, which is to try to balance pea foods with brat foods. I'll explain what I mean by both of these, but it's important to make sure that you're giving your baby a good balance of both of these types of foods. Generally, most fruits that start with the letter P are juicy and full of fiber. Think about it: peaches, pears, plums, prunes, peas, pumpkin. Pea foods help your little one when they start to get backed up. On the other hand, brat foods are good for solidifying things when your little one gets a tummy bug. Brat, B-R-A-T, stands for bananas, rice, apples, and toast. These are all foods that can cause binding to happen. Remember, they can cause constipation if they're not given in moderation. We always try to balance these out for Lucas. We just adjust if we notice he's having any tummy problems. Since Lucas is almost done with lunch already, let's go ahead and move on to dinner, where I'll be sharing 2 more tips with you guys. So it's much later now, around 7:30 actually. We're finally sitting down to have dinner after running an errand with Lucas's daddy when he got home from work. Lucas nursed for the 4th time around 5 o'clock. Because dinner was going to be kind of late, we got some takeout for ourselves and added it to some leftovers we had from the night before. Lucas's plate has some Great Northern beans, green beans, a mandarin orange, and a little bit of rice and broccoli from our takeout. You'll notice us giving him some of the food from our plate throughout the meal as well. So I'll jump right into my 4th tip for you guys, which is to make sure that you provide multiple textures for your baby. When you start on Baby Led Weaning, you prepare all the baby's food in a finger shape so they can kind of nom on the top of the food while grasping the rest of it in their hand. This is because babies don't learn to open their hands right away. When you start, the food is usually cooked, but not so overcooked that it falls apart. Lucas did really good with everything at first. There were a few times that he gagged on foods that I didn't think he would have much trouble with. Now, it's important to remember that gagging is part of the learning process. It doesn't necessarily mean that the baby is choking. Please do your research on this topic. Anyway, I started getting really stressed out about Lucas's food and began overcooking everything. I wanted to avoid the gagging altogether. But then 1 month into Baby Led Weaning, we noticed that Lucas wasn't chewing some of his food. He would often just swallow the food whole, especially things like peaches, boiled sweet potatoes, or noodles. Anything slippery he would just swallow. I really think it was because I had only been offering him those safe and mushy foods. He had just gotten lazy about chewing things up because he didn't actually have to. What we did to try to fix this was we started back at the basics with finger-shaped food and all the different textures. I stopped overcooking Lucas's foods and I sat down to eat with Lucas. Which brings me to my 5th tip for you guys. That is to lead by example. When you sit down to eat with your baby, they get the opportunity to watch what you do when you eat. When we started back at the basics with textures, I was on the edge of my seat making sure Lucas was chewing his food. I had my meal at the same time as him and made sure he saw what I was doing. Babies pick up on things we do. They see how we're chewing our food and how we're using our utensils and drinking from our cups. It creates a good family environment to eat with your baby. Even if your environment is as weird as ours. That was just a sneak peek of Lucas's daddy. So that's all we're going to share for Lucas's last meal of the day, but don't go anywhere just yet. Here is that recipe for the Baked Cinnamon Raisin Oatmeal that I promised you. So here we go. Don't stress about writing down these ingredients. At the end of the clip, there's going to be a recipe card that you can screenshot to save for later. So this is all of the ingredients you're going to need for this recipe. All you do is take that banana and mash it up, and then add each ingredient one at a time. Mix it all together so that it's all blended very well. Be sure to grease your pan very well so that everything can come out really easily. And then you just pop them in a preheated oven at 350 degrees and let them bake for about 20 to 25 minutes.
That's it for today's video. Thanks for watching.
And if you didn't already, be sure to like and subscribe.